Hello, good evening, everyone. Jai Hind. I have the honor and privilege to be in conversation with a lady, a very elegant and a graceful lady who needs no introduction at all. Yes, you can see her there, Binalakshmi Nepram. She is the founder director of the Manipur Women's Gun Survivors Network, the convener of the Northeast India Women Initiative for Peace, Global Alliance, Indigenous People, Gender Justice and Peace, who believes humanity came before religion, community, caste, creed, region, anything. Who believes in humanity, who stands for humanity, who stands for the human race. And let's go ahead and speak to her furthermore on what she could think, according to her, could be the way forward to bring peace in a beautiful state like Manipur with beautiful people around. Hello, ma'am. Good evening and Jai Hind, and thank you very much for spending time.
Thank you so much, Major Mohammed Ali Shah. It's such a pleasure to be in your program. You have been, an ardent. You have an ardent love for Northeast of India. Is known to many of us. So it's a delight to be a part of your program today. And greetings to everyone watching this live.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Ma'am, you have been a writer, you have written things, you have an IDSA, you have worked closely with them. In fact, your work is well known and appreciated, and everyone, they swear by your name. People take your name, and you are someone who is very neutral, who doesn't take sides, who stands for humanity, who genuinely wants peace to prevail. So do you think what do you think could be the way forward, ma'am, to bring about peace in Manipur, ma'am?
Yes. So thank you so much for the program. And yes, absolutely. For me, I'm a human being first. I am an Indian citizen and I am a very proud Manipuri. So I am all these identities and also indigenous. All these identities are a part of us. We are all built with multiple identities. But what cuts through this is the fact that we are all human beings which are born on this earth to ensure that our birth is a service to humanity, and that remains at the core of what we do for the last 20 years in Manipur, across northeast of India, and across the country, and now across a little bit around the world. So the issue of Manipur, as Manipur, the name means land of jewels, Ali. It's a beautiful state which is also known as a Switzerland of India, land of a lush green valley surrounded by 9 mountain chains. Rich in mythology, rich in history, rich in people, a multicultural, multi-religious, multi-ethnic society has been burning in flames for the last 10 months. For me, as a Manipuri and as a citizen of our country, we have been grappling since the eruption of violence on 3rd of May, trying to find solutions to this particular issue. And as I'm also a historian by training, so as a historian and as a humanitarian, the pathway towards peace in Manipur would be first for those who are bearing arms to please lay down their arms. The safety and security of any community, state, or nation should be left with the state, with the center, with the military, with the police. They should be guarding the boundaries of our nations from external aggression and protecting its citizens from any harm. That's the first cardinal principle that I know as a citizen, as a human being born in that part of the world. So number 2, those who are access to arms, heavily armed, they should know that they are not above the rule of law. That in India, you are allowed certain weapons to carry, but the weapons that we are seeing in the Manipur conflict, these are high caliber, automatic assault rifles. The mere possession of which should land you in jail, but yet gun-toting elements in both the hills and the valley have taken over our lives and our destinies. We will have to think together that this cannot be the way in any culture, community, whether it's Manipur, in Delhi, in Gujarat, any part of India. We cannot allow the world's largest democracy, having the highest number of population, that its citizens are arming themselves to protect what they call their rights, their land and their territory, which Manipur has sadly descended into. And I also have full faith in the trust in the government, in the policymakers, that they will do all in their capacity to see that Manipur gets the peace that it deserves. Fourth, what is really important is for the people of Manipur to understand each other, which will require the state and the central government to ensure that the history, the culture, the traditions, the language, the food, or for example, in Manipur, 33 plus indigenous groups, communities, they're able to understand one another. And the reason that they're not able to understand one another is the history of the textbooks of our country, and our state does not contain that. So as a result, one of the ways of resolving the conflict would be to create pathways in which we can learn about each other, not in war, but by sitting down, by having a cup of tea, enjoying a meal, and saying that we need to coexist together. And finally, it is important for those who are in Delhi, policymakers, particularly policymakers, and those who are what I called those who are taking care of the nation, whoever is in power. For us as citizen, we want good governance, that they are able to do good governance, unbiased governance, that our security forces and those who are supposed to protect the lives of every citizen are doing their duty and not creating wedge between ethnic communities. So I think this is my prayer for resolution towards peace and progress in my home state, Manipur.
Very well said, ma'am. Very well said. Ma'am, could you throw some light on the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network that you are the founder director of, ma'am?
Yeah.
Of course, I know of it. I would like our viewers also to be more aware of that, ma'am.
Yes. So the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network inception took place and the launch in 2007, Ali, And at that time, I was just a researcher. I was a scholar. I have always been a good student. And I love good research, writing, and analysis. That is the core of what we do. But after I finished my research, which is now published in a book called South Asia's Fractured Frontier and released by former Prime Minister I.K. Gujral at India Habitat Center many, many years ago, writing that book made me realize what was happening in Manipur and across the northeast of India and even across the Indo-Burma border, because I backpacked, I traced armed trafficking routes, I looked at narco trafficking routes, I looked at why is Manipur at that time, can you imagine, I'm talking about like a decade and a half ago when I started my work. At that time, Manipur was still in conflict. Manipur still had guns flooding. Manipur had drug trafficking going on. And I wanted to find out why this is happening, because people generally want to live a life of peace. But I wanted to find out why there was military curfew, why there are lots of insurgents, why there is lots of violence, and also the search of answer of why my 14-year-old niece who died in a bomb blast in Manipur. By the way, Ali, it was a bomb planted by Naga militants to kill a Kuki politician. And my niece stepped on that bomb and died. She was only 14 years old. And I want your viewers to remember her. Her name was Nepram Reena, 14 years old, going for a badminton practice, stepped on a bomb planted by Naga militants to kill a Kuki politician. And my 14-year-old niece, a student of Tiny Tot, stepped on that bomb. And we couldn't even get the parts of our body for a proper, funeral. So this is the reality of how many of us have grown up in this state. So having seen violence in my own family, committed on my own family, for me, I realized that the only pathway towards this is to understand it. And after I studied what was happening and published it, I suddenly realized what was going on. So I returned back to Manipur from Delhi, where I was doing my graduation, master's, and my MPhil thesis. And then I started the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network. And the reason I started this network was because, Ali, violence affects not those who engineered it. Violence always affect the poor, the marginalized. And when I realized this, I have tears in my eyes when I remember this, but I have a gut feeling that if we do not take care of the victims and the survivors of conflict, then I said, what is the use of my research? I could become a professor in JNU or Delhi University or even in a university abroad. I could have got that good life. But instead, I returned home, worked with a team of women survivors whom I was able to find. And then we started this network called the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network. I have never owned a gun in my life, neither will I own. For me, I'm a non-violent person in my heart, spirit, and action. And for us, we said that human beings, as long as we exist, there will always be fight. Jagarta hai. Even as siblings, conflict is a part of life, Ali. But when you introduce guns, जान लेता है, किसी का जान चले जाते हैं. So for me, I said, we cannot create a human life. Then what right do we have to take a human life just because? And I saw the heavy amount of weapons flooding Manipur, and these weapons becoming weaponized society. And I wanted to drive home the point. That's why we name it Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network. So we started because Manipur has 20,000 registered widows, Ali. 20,000 registered widows. And I went looking for these widows, and they haven't got the support they need. Can you imagine widow pension kitne aata hai? Per month, 200 rupees, 300 rupees at that time. उसी से कैसे किसका जीवन हो जाता है, जीना हो जाता है. So I was shocked at the level of violence happening and how the poor, the marginalized, which are impacted by violence. So I made it my life's mission to ensure that these women, families who are survivors of violence, they're able to get the support to get up on their feet and get on to life with the courage, because I realized at that time in 2007 that some people profit out of the conflict, Ali. Okay, while many lives are lost, many people, conflict is profitable, Ali. So as a result, I realized ye to rokne nahi wala hai, and who are we to tell anyone, because these powerful groups, men with guns around. So that's why we took a very neutral humanitarian stand. Whoever has died, it could be from the hills of Manipur, it could be from the valley. Our team covers all the different tribes of Manipur. Both hills, I've spent time in the hills and in the valley of Manipur. And we try to identify widows whose husbands have been killed or their children have been killed in this conflict. And then we do three things, very simple. First, we try to see if there's food on the table, because many families are very, very poor families. So first, we try to get an income generated for this family. The good thing in northeast of India, as you know, Ali, is that many women know how to weave, but they didn't have the money. So it was the women of Manipur in the hills and valley who taught me how 2,000 rupees can transform a life. With that, you can buy a few kilograms of yarn, cotton or wool. You can start weaving. From that, the women told me they can earn a profit. And we started opening the bank accounts of women, because many of the women accept their names and their I think they don't own anyone. It's a very patriarchal society also in the Northeast, as you know. So we started opening the bank accounts of thousands of women. Number one, the first one was from my own scholarship money. We opened the bank account of about 15 to 20 women. And I put my mother as a guarantor, because these women didn't even have birth certificates. So their identities. So my mother is a national award holder for Best Teachers Award. She got from president. So she was a guarantor, and we were able to open the bank account. So we got income coming for the women. We gave looms, we gave yarns. And second, we try to see if their children are going to school. And then we try to get children in good schools wherever they are. And third, if the family wants to file a case for the wrongful death of their loved ones, they have every right to in a democracy. So we try to connect them with pro bono lawyers, because these women cannot afford, to ensure that they're able to at least the pathway for getting justice for their loved one who was wrongfully killed, they would feel that they are doing their part. So this is how the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network was born in 2007, launched, and we work in 300 villages now, Ali, and we are now, this model has also been proliferated in different parts of northeast of India. Yeah.
That's so inspiring to know, and I was a little pained to know, ma'am, that your niece, your 14-year-old niece, when you lost her, which year was that, ma'am, if I may ask, please?
Yes, it was 1997. 1997.
1990. Oh, I was there in Manipur that time. And which area did it happen? Which area did it happen there?
It's the area in Sanjen Thong, which is the prime area of all the MLAs and this. So
Correct.
this is, it was the blast in Sanjen Thong. So if you go back, you will know this blast which happened. The
Correct.
person who died is my 14-year-old niece, Ali.
Right, right, right. Okay, I was there. I was there in Kakchin in 1997 at the same time.
Yes,
So
yes,
I can well imagine. And
yes,
it's really a very very noble work that you do. And in fact, also I would like to once again say that it's a double privilege again because your mother is a national award winner as well for the best teacher. And which year was this when she got the award?
it was very interesting. It's around the same time. Everything happened around the same time. My mother is a very well-known educationist in Manipur who have dedicated her entire life to education of not just ordinary children, but she also opened up a school which had evening classes for underprivileged children who cannot pay. So she is a true educator at heart, and I really owe it to her and my father for raising us up as good human beings and good citizens, and we've always ensured what we do is of service to people and not just for ourselves. So again, I think you also must have good parents, and like for many of us, I think so important that, and really to our parents for the kind of support they have given to our kind of work, which we continue to do till today. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. No, and also you are the Northeast India Women Initiative for Peace, the convener of that. Could you tell us a
Yes.
bit about
Yes.
this organization, please?
Absolutely. Everything happened step by step, Ali. First was my research that I did in Delhi University and in JNU. After the research, I set up the Manipur Women Gun Survivors Network. And as I said, you can preach till the end, but you have to see if people are hungry. Are they okay? Is their health okay? Not everything is to be said in this way of violence, but you have to take care. Every human being needs to eat, they need to dream, they need to have a home, they need to send their children to school. So after we took care of the basic needs, we realized that there are 17 peace talks happening in northeast of India, and not a single woman is in it, Ali. And you and I know how northeast is home to extraordinary women leaders who have fought in Manipur against British colonial rule in the Nupi Lal of 1904 and 1939. Then we had the Naga Mothers, we had the Kuki Mothers Association, the Zomi Mothers Association. Northeast of India is a crucible of very strong women's movement, even older than the global movements for women's rights. I would say this because I've looked at history of the world too. So we have one of the richest, and you have been to Manipur, you know the Nupi Ima market, the Mother's Bazaar, the Nupi Kaitel, where 5,000 women are there in one area, and a powerhouse of how we could raise an issue, in the right way, right? So this is something very unique to the northeast of India, which I have not seen in other parts of the world, except a little bit here and there for example, in Africa or in Thailand. There are also little markets run by women. But the Manipur women's markets are extraordinary forms of women's solidarity in one spot. You must be knowing in one minute they can galvanize thousands of women in this. So this
Yes.
is a very unique phenomena which has been in existence for over 500 years. So when we realized that the government of India was only doing peace talks with armed groups. Now, I also, during my research, did a mapping of how many people are in these armed groups, Ali. And you have been in the defense force, so you will know. So how many would be in an armed group? Like 10,000, 30,000 maximum, whatever, even less. If you look at every group, one group may have 200, one group may have 5,000. But imagine Northeast is home to 45 million people. And we were like, how can like 10,000 hold us all hostage? And how come the Indian government is only talking to this minuscule group? So we wanted our government to wake up. We want our civil society to wake up that you cannot have a successful peace accord or a peace talks if you exclude 45, 50% of that 45 million, which are women. So
Right.
we started, it's you just calculate that. It's logic. It's not that whatever isms I'm not for. Again, I'm a humanitarian. So I look at that very core practical aspects. How can look at all the peace accords in Northeast of India? And I've studied them all. So if you want peace in Northeast of India, you will have to have genuine negotiations for peace. And for that, you cannot just talk behind closed doors only with armed groups. You will have to include strong mothers, women's movement, which has been in existence for the last 116 years. So to
Correct.
drive home that point, we started the Northeast India Women Initiative for Peace. And the reason is we launched that in 2010. Again, all of this is all based on our practical experiences, one form after another. And during that time, I traveled to each and every Northeast state. I spent
Okay.
time not just in the capital, but also in the peripheral areas. I almost died in a landslide in Arunachal Pradesh. You know how
Oh,
these areas are. I was in the jungle for about 48 hours because the landslide was so heavy that I saw a whole mountain falling in front of me. It was
oh
so
my God.
devastating in
Where
Arunachal.
was for this? Where in
Yeah,
Arunachal?
Arunachal and Assam border. So we are trying to cross Arunachal to Assam, and there it happened. Yeah. So
Oh,
again, lots of landslides. So, but all we are saying is we have traveled through difficult terrain to each of the Northeast states and try to talk to women to make them understand. So, for example, when we arrive in Sikkim, we were the first women's groups to even have a proper meeting on Women Initiative for Peace in Sikkim, because Sikkim was then ruled by, I think, Nar Bahadur Bhandari for 20 years, and nobody could speak up. So, but we said we come in peace. We are not there to topple anything because we are not a political group. We're just a humanitarian group trying to see how women can come together. So Ali, it was an amazing moment when we had our first Northeast India Women Peace Congregation in 2013. And women from all the 8 Northeast states came to Imphal. Women from Sikkim traveled 2 days. Can you imagine? 2 days to reach from Sikkim to Imphal. That is a level of connectivity. Can you imagine? Because there's no direct flight. You have to go through that area and then spend a night in Guwahati and then come to Manipur. But we managed to get Mizo women, Sikkimese women, Tripura women, women from Arunachal, and it was extraordinary, Ali. And all the women, Bodo women, for the first time, we put our issues together and we realized how similar the issues are. And hence the need for us to learn from one another as mothers, as women, as humans, to see how we can work to build peace in our parts of the world. And I'm so proud to tell you, Ali, this network is one of the most beautiful networks that we help create. And right now, the women are organically connecting with each other, even during the last 10 months of crisis. That we have never stopped our relations, we have never stopped our humanity. And that's one thing I want your viewers to know, that the humanism behind this, what I call engineered conflicts. And I always say that if some people can engineer war, we, the women of Northeast India, we will engineer the peace that we deserve, that our children deserve.
wow. Very well said. Very, very well said. I am so inspired by that. You mentioned about that you almost died in a landslide when you're
Yes.
crossing over from Assam to Arunachal. Well, there was
Yeah.
almost a time when in the year 2008 when I almost got shot up by the NSCN, and it was my knowledge of that area, being friend with the tribals over there, and having and knowing Nagamis. and the dialect where the insurgent belonged to. In fact, that helped me and my colleagues. Our lives were saved. It's a very, very long story. I'll share that with you later on. I would
Yes,
also
yes,
like to know about the Global Alliance of the Indigenous People that you are a part of, in fact.
yes, yes. Yes. So again, Ali, like I belong to parents who are both a zoologist and a botanist. So I don't know if you know Manipur well. In
Yeah.
Manipur, if you're doing science, you're doing something. If you're doing arts, you're not doing anything. So I come from a family of doctors and and parents who are both scientifically minded. So uh, I always look at life logically, right? So what is interesting is what I thought when I was growing up and I was doing all this research. That's why it's so important to travel. I'll tell you this. So, after I wrote my first book, South Asia's Fractured Frontier, which looked at arms trafficking and narco trafficking in the Indo Burma border, the Northeast, and all of that, I was invited to observe at the United Nations because in 2001, this is very important again for what's happening in Manipur. In 2001, as early as the United Nations gathered together, and India as a member of UN was also there. They all gathered together at the UN headquarters in New York and said it's not nuclear weapons which is killing people every day, it's guns. It's called small arms and light weapons. Take the lives of 800,000 people a year, Ali. So suddenly I realized that what was happening in Manipur is not just a Manipur phenomena, but because during my thesis I mapped out 58 types of weapons flooding from over 13 countries.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
I tracked down like M16s. And this easy because you are in the you are in the defense. So if you remember, the Indian military also have a day where they display the weapons that they have captured. Right? So those photographs used to be in Manipuri newspapers, and I was able to get them. And then the non-state armed groups also, if you remember, on their rising day, they will also display the weapons that they have. So for me as a scholar, I was able to see weapons of whoever, and I could like look at it and then try to track down where these weapons are from. So this was the research that I did for my book. And then I also
Hmm.
interviewed people and I was able to track down weapons from these. So that took me to the United Nations, where I was able to be at the headquarters and listen as an observer scholar to know what's happening around the world. Now, if you know Manipur that well and Northeast, you know the story of 9mm Chinese-made guns in Manipur, which is flooding. Guns are sold like sweets in Moray and other parts. So we always know the story of how weapons are flooding my home state. Anyway, the story is I was able to come out from Manipur and also see what's happening around the world, right? Now, 80% of the world's conflicts, Ali, are happening in biodiversity hotspots. 80% of the world's conflicts are happening in biodiversity hotspots where indigenous people live. And then I realized that Manipur and the Northeast is a huge biodiversity hotspot. For example, Loktak Lake, that you must have noticed, it's a
Floating
global,
islands.
yeah, it's a global world wetland. It's in the world's top wetland area. The Kabul Lamjau, and many parts of Meghalaya, and they are a part of a rich biodiversity. Arunachal, that you. So suddenly I realized that the conflicts are happening in these biodiversity hotspots where indigenous people live. So I started connecting with indigenous people, like for example in Guatemala, or even in the Inuits in Greenland. And lo and behold, suddenly you realize how many of these similar sorts of violence in the areas where gun runners, drug traffickers take advantage of the innocence of many of the indigenous people, and then they have made these indigenous lands filled with criminal networks, resulting in no peace. Now,
Hmm.
and that's why I was absolutely clear that it's important to, again, just like I did from Manipur with connecting with Northeast India women, I started reaching out as a scholar to indigenous people around the world, and lo and behold, Ali, I found similar patterns of violence, of the areas being under conflict for decades, like in Manipur. कब तक रुकेंगी ये हिंसा? It is not just about last 10 months, Ali. I've been researching this area for almost 2 decades. Military, this violence was there in the year of my birth, in the 70s. We thought, theek ho jayega, theek ho jayega, theek ho jayega. Rather, it's become worsened, you see. So I think, as you will know, that you have the bird's eye view when you live in that area, when you go a little bit. So when I started understanding Manipur when I lived in Delhi. And then when you are able to travel a little bit and connect with other people, you also started realizing, ye to pattern hai. So that's why I said conflict profits some people. And as a result, many of these areas, border areas, inhabited by indigenous people, wahan pe criminal networks easily operate, you know. And then in the garb, and they start controlling our politics. You will know this more than me, you know. How many connected with drugs are as our members of Legislative Assembly? Just take a look at their records. It's an open secret for many of us in Manipur. So for us, being raised by parents, growing up at a school which always tell you to speak the truth to power, which always tell you to do the right thing, then when you grow up and seeing drug dealers, gun runners, violent elements donning a Fab India kurta, and then in white, sitting in our members of parliament, or what message are we giving to the younger generation? What message? How are we going to build a stronger, better nation with criminals who are our lawmakers? What I call, how will our lawbreakers become lawmakers? So this is what hurts me, Ali. This is going to hurt us. We need a strong country. We need good ethical people to lead us. Koi bhi party ho, we don't care, but do the right thing. If you love the nation, do the right thing. But don't do a, backhanded, closed door negotiation with those who only have guns and leave all of us as if we are nothing. So I hope through your program, Ali, I pray and hope that the decision makers, those who can determine decision of 1.7 billion Indians, will listen to you, to this program, and hope it'll change their heart and their minds to do the right thing, whether it's in the periphery, and more important for the periphery. As I said to you before, that the defending of a nation, kitne log hai army mein? Ali, you tell me. 4 lakh? 10 lakh? We're a country of 1.7 billion people. The protection of boundary of our nation has to be done by the military as well as by the civilians who are living in this periphery. That's why, Ali, through your program, I want to tell the people of our country, help the people of Manipur defend the territorial integrity of the state and the nation. Trust those who are protecting this. Do not mistrust those who are trying to defend it, because we know who is trying to engineer violence in that part of our world. So trust the people of Manipur to ensure 1.3 people in Manipur to defend and protect the border of our nation there, because in the last 10 months, our hearts were sinking that there could be an external aggression on that part of our country. We were so worried. And I laud the bravery of some of them who stood up to protect that. And I hope that the policymakers help do the right decision making to help defend and protect the territorial boundary of Manipur and our nation there right now, because it's a more sensitive area.
Rightly brought out by you. Rightly brought out by you. You have been very vocal regarding gender equality and about peace and such things. Of lately, someone just told me that someone had asked you recently, "What do you do?" And you said, "I go around looking for poor people who are underprivileged, and try to help them out." Am I right on that?
Yes, Ali. It's very, very interesting how so many people in several past elections asked me to contest elections. And I said, if I was doing my work for this, then that you are absolutely mistaken. For me, I don't want power the way they do. I don't want anything. All I want to see is that the forgotten people, the people who are living at the fringes of society, whether they're in the hills or the valley of our state, the region, or the nation, if any one of them hurts, my heart is for that. They could be Manipuri, they could be Gujarati, they could be a Delhiite. I have, wherever I have seen people who need support, I have always stood up for them. And yes, so sometimes, as I told you, I wanted to be a physicist in my life. I had dreams to be a physicist. But the violence and the conflict in Manipur took me away from my dreams. I can still return to it one day, but the way in which the last 10 years and 20 years have been, I couldn't go back to physics. But all I'm saying is, yes, at this moment, I know that violence affects the poorest of the poor, Ali. I have met
Very true.
mothers whose two sons have been shot dead. I have been to homes where out of 7 family members, 6 have been killed. I have been to families where after the death of their husband, the only home she had was a polythene sheet near a mango tree. I visited the home of this woman. I visited homes in Churachandpur where a young mother had 4 children and her husband was killed in an inter-ethnic fight. I have been to homes in the Naga hills, in the hills of Churachandpur, or in the hills of the different districts there around it, as well as also to other 8 Northeast states. And for me, doing this work will be a commitment for a lifetime. And I will continue to go looking for the poor, the marginalized, those who are impacted by this violent entrenched conflict. For them, we set up these networks, and for them, we will continue to do the work that we have done for the last 15 years.
So proud of your work. And you mentioned about people telling you, coaxing you that you must fight elections. And I also am of the same view, because I feel that educated, cultured people, right thinking people, balanced, mature people are very much required in our political system. Because if they shy off from their responsibilities of showing the way to the others, then who will do it? My real sister is a Lok Sabha candidate for the MP elections just now coming up now from South Kolkata. So the very fact is, I was very happy, irrespective of the party one is in. And we need leadership of the right people there to show us the light. Because there used to be a time earlier where people who were not very well qualified, I mean, they would go. I mean, people who were from a different background, they would enter politics, and educated people would not enter politics. But now things are changing. So, ma'am, I strongly think you must reconsider what people have advised you. In fact, you must, because conversing with you and the good work that you do, I mean, it's something such a delight. And I've been following your videos, especially your interview with Karan Thapar. That was, I watched it a couple of times, in fact. Ma'am, before I let you go, I know you must be busy. Before I let you go, any last message you would like to throw to the universe, ma'am?
This is we are living in a time where we think as a human civilization we are progressing, but we are regressing, Ali. And this is not just about Manipur or our country, but all over the world, people are hurting. And where it hurts in one part of the world, because, we have a saying in Sanskrit, the world is one global family. So what happens in one part of the globe also affects us. That we cannot deny. So at this time of rising global crisis, wars and conflicts, it's absolutely important for India as a nation which gave non-violence to the world, while we progress technologically, economically, geostrategic, very important to continue to work on this. We should also realize that it's important to cultivate the ethos of how this nation was founded. The nation was founded without firing a single bullet, Ali. United Nations declare 2nd November as the International Day of Nonviolence. We are a nation which has given yoga to the world. We are a nation which gave nonviolence to the world. We want at this time in India's history to reflect that however much we may grow, in every sense, we should not forget that as human beings, we have to stand strong as a moral conscience of the world, as the world's largest democracy, as what Prime Minister Modi called the mother of all democracies, as a nation which gave nonviolence to the world. We are the moral conscience of the world. And this we must not forget as we project ourselves outside as well as within, that we grew up together as a nation which is true to the ethos of a secular nation, which is a strength of a democratic nation, largest democracy, that we must not forget. And whoever is trying to hurt that, to let them know that it is a greater interest of a nation to work towards coexistence, whether in Manipur or in the entire country. This, for me, is a need of the hour, and not to polarize and not to target communities to religion, caste, or creed, but to think we are all 1.7 Indians are standing strong and tall together, that no one should be able to point a finger at us and said, but rather be the beacon of light and hope that this world needs.
Wow, that's very well said, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate you taking your time, ma'am. So very, very kind of you. Take care, ma'am. My
Thank
regards to everyone there back home.
you.
Take
Yes.
care. Jai Hind, ma'am.
That take it. Thank you so much, Ali, for all your work. Again, it's I always say, last point, I always say nation building has to be done with a lot of love, not at gunpoint. Nation building
Ab-
has to be done with a lot of love. प्यार से strengthen कर सकता है सब कुछ मणिपुर से even any part. So I think we should remember to have love in our hearts as we do what we are doing in whatever field we are doing. Okay.
Absolutely, ma'am. I mean, I've always believed that, I've always believed that gun will only bring peace. It will never bring peace. And
Yes.
when I was serving, I had come from Jammu Kashmir, and then
Yes.
I had come to
Yes.
the northeast part of India. And I
Yes.
still remember 28th September 2005. I mean, I had just returned I had just seen action in JNK, and now I was in Jiribam on
Yeah.
28th September 2005.
Yes.
And some action had just taken place in Jiribam that time.
Yes.
And I always believed in one thing, which was you get people, you have to win hearts and minds. You
Yes.
have to get people on your side. You have to make everyone feel that the armed forces are there to
Yes.
protect you. They are there for
Yes.
you, not to
Yes.
intimidate you. So
Yes.
people, when my people, when they
Yeah.
saw me in uniform with my weapon and my, how intimidating it can get, the black patka which you wear around you,
Yes.
that we don't wear to scare people away. We wear it to protect ourselves from the dust. It looks
Oh,
intimidating. I agree.
right,
So when
right.
people were seeing me in that, the
Yes.
local villagers would tell me that I was a captain those days. That
Yes.
Captain Ali, when we see you in uniform,
Yes.
we feel now that the army is here to protect us. We do not get intimidated by you, because I knew the local culture, the language, and later on, I learned and I merged with them
Yes.
completely. So what you said, I could so connect with everything that you said. Thank you very much, ma'am.
And thank you, Ali. As I said, again, the whole issue of the Armed Forces Special Powers. I always have said this act was adopted in the Indian Parliament in 1958. It was only supposed to be for 3 to 6 months. Yaad hai? Only. And so I always say, don't blame the Indian military for what's happening, because sometimes there is a blame. It is the politicians who adopted that in the parliament. I said it was adopted in the annals of the Indian parliament, and it should be in the annals of the Indian parliament that should be discussed and debated. It's a former British colonial act. British log to chala gaya na, Ali. So I said, and then, of course, I also know that there are all these debates around this. But I always said that army should be there to protect the nation from external aggression. The northeast of India shared boundary with 5 countries: China, Myanmar, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan. So the northeast is a very geostrategic area, as you know, right? So army can be there as the protector within this insight. I always say you should have this. A force which will ensure that people are not getting access to all these criminal elements and violent elements, then we can easily contain the area, because we have Arms Act, we have everything. And in fact, I spoke with, it'll be wonderful for you to interview one day. Ravinder Pal Singh was also a former Indian military who worked in Mizoram. Then he became a peace researcher, and he wrote several books on arms procurement and also on accountability of parliament in ensuring that citizens get the security and deserve. So we said we should have stabilization units You know, in many of these civilian areas, you put stabilizing units in the civilian areas to be able to control, the movement and everything. And then that's how you can defend and protect. In that way, you will get. So we have been trying to like ideate together on, again, for me, I'm always like, what is the solution? Uh, what has happened. You cannot walk back. What we can do is to determine shanti lane ke liye, for development, for progress. We have to look ahead for the next 5 years, 10 years, possibly 50 years. So let's put the seeds now in the right way. The right seeds. Hoga na to ugega, no? The right plant also will grow up. But if you are
Exactly.
connecting only, that's what my final appeal is. If you're only talking to men with guns, then you are missing up almost 50 to 80% of what citizens think. So it's time for our government and our policymakers to listen to voices like ours, which includes yours and mine today. So I hope and pray that they do, and I hope we can put the right seeds for a better, peaceful, prosperous Manipur and a prosperous nation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. It's really an honor and truly a pleasure, and what a delight to be in conversation with you. Take care, ma'am. Jai
Thank
Hind,
you.
ma'am.
Jai Hind, and take care. You too. Yeah.